What's going on, guys, and welcome to Highly and Alph Gaming. I'm your host, Alph, and did you see that? They're making a Breath of the Wild sequel, and it's gonna be big and awesome and cool, and look, there's a hippo ox thing, and I'm definitely very excited for Breath of the Wild 2, but we know almost nothing about the game right now except a tiny bit of the story. That lack of knowledge won't stop me from making a video about the trailer, though. As the title of this video suggests, today I'll be giving my hopes for the Breath of the Wild sequel. This won't necessarily be a trailer analysis like I did with Mario Maker 2, but I will probably talk about the trailer a good amount because it's really cool. One thing to note before we get started, I don't want to type out or say Breath of the Wild every time I have to say it, so I'm gonna shamelessly rip off Haydox's joke and just say Breath every time. Now that that's all done, let's find out what my hopes are for Breath 2. Since all we really know anything about is the story, I think that's a good place to start. By the looks of it, the story in Breath 2 is going to be pretty dark, much like Majora's Mask. Personally, I think it's also going to be a very original story, but again, this is all speculation. Many people seem to think the dead guy in the cave is Ganondorf because of his hair and jewelry, but I'm not convinced. It looks like this game is indeed a direct story sequel to the original Breath, so that won't make much sense to kill Ganon, then have to beat Ganondorf. Besides, if anything, the corpse's features just look vaguely Gerudo, so this could be another one of the Gerudo Kings that was born. Maybe we're all wrong, and this isn't Ganondorf or any villain we've seen before. Personally, I hope this is a new villain just because of how awesome Skull Kid and Girahim were, but this guy does look a bit like Ganondorf, so I guess we'll just have to wait and see. There's obviously a bad guy waking up, and the hand thing to go with him, but more interesting in my opinion is how the events of this trailer will affect Zelda and Link, and, in turn, how they affect the setting of the game. If you follow me on Twitter, you know my concerns with the game's setting, but we'll get to that later. For now, in the trailer, it looks like the weird cave thing is under Hyrule Castle because of what we see at the end. Hyrule Castle itself moving gave me a lot of Super Mario Galaxy vibes, but I doubt we'll see it fly off into the distance under the control of a bunch of moblins or something. No, the real interesting part about the idea of this trailer taking place under Hyrule Castle to me is that we've already gotten a pretty thorough look in and under this iteration of Hyrule Castle, so how do Zelda and Link get into this new cave? It looks like that glorious hippo ox thing they're taking with them has quite a bit of luggage, which would indicate a long journey, but this is just under Hyrule Castle, right? Arlo has sort of mentioned this idea before, but what if Zelda and Link are traveling through a really long series of tunnels that were secretly buried centuries or even millennia before Breath took place? What if this is where the Hylians stowed Ganon 10,000 years ago after defeating him, and he's being woken up by this hand thing? Does the game take place primarily in these caves, or is most of it back up in Hyrule? Is any of the game after this early cutscene in Hyrule at all? There are so many questions to discuss just from this short trailer, but I'll change subjects now. The story is cool and all, but more important to me is the game's world. Breath was all about that world to begin with, and without a big fat land to explore, this would be a very sad sequel indeed. You may have seen my tweet about the interview with Aonuma, but if not, I'll give you a quick recap. There's a Game Explain video talking about an interview with Aonuma, where we learn that Breath 2 will supposedly revisit the same Hyrule again, but with new gameplay and story features. I don't know about you guys, but to me, this is some very, very bad news. I'm personally of the opinion that the entire point of making a Breath sequel with the same assets was to give players a new world to explore, just like they did with Breath. To deny players a new world doesn't completely mean the game will be utter garbage or anything, but count me seriously worried about how the sequel will go after hearing about this interview. I know a new world isn't everything, but it sure does mean a lot to me. I'm hoping, if Hyrule is indeed the only open world in Breath 2, that the actual landscape and landmarks of Hyrule will be changed up drastically. Nintendo's even sort of done this already with the Distant Spring and the Perplexing Pool in Pikmin 1 and Pikmin 2. Those levels look relatively the same and have similar features and layouts, but they're still different enough to feel like their own unique areas. I could see them doing the same thing with Hyrule across Breath and Breath 2, but even more seamlessly make it happen through the game's story. We know something big is under Hyrule Castle, something powerful enough to move the castle itself. So what if that thing is also powerful enough to burst out and reshape Hyrule? What if new mountains and hills pop up everywhere, and buildings and cities get rearranged? That's not the best explanation of the concept, but I think you get the idea. Whether it's the thing under the castle or some other force entirely, I think it would be really cool to drastically change up the setup for Hyrule for Breath 2, without actually making the game take place somewhere else. Another idea I have about keeping Hyrule while still giving players a new place to explore is to give the game a second world. I don't know if the game would take up too much memory if they did this, but what if they made a dark version of Hyrule starting under Hyrule Castle, like the Dark World or Lorule? That would be super cool, but also a bit of a stretch. I know I talked about the world for like 8 years, but we're done now, I promise. So we've covered everything so far that we have any basis whatsoever on, but now let's delve into the more speculative side of things, shall we? First of all, something that a lot of people seemed disappointed about in Breath was the dungeons, and I agree that they could be improved upon. That's not to say I don't like the Divine Beasts. I'd put myself in the relatively small camp of people who actually thought they were really cool and very enjoyable, but they definitely weren't perfect. I appreciate the thematic consistency of them, but I'll certainly be a wee bit miffed if Breath 2's dungeons are also just brown technology globs. Aside from theme, I was in fact a fan of the more non-linear puzzle style of the Divine Beasts, but I was not a fan of how short the dungeons were, or how little fighting was in them. I know I just complained for 2 minutes about how important an open world is to me, but if this sequel is gonna be bigger and better than Breath, I want bigger dungeons with more puzzles and more combat. Some of the coolest and most iconic rooms in previous Zelda dungeons were the mini-boss rooms, and I want those to make a return. And I know I'm just kinda throwing requests at Nintendo at this point, but while I'm here, small keys were fun too. There isn't a huge difference between solving a puzzle to open a door and solving a puzzle to get a key to open a door, but it's just fun. It doesn't really affect the game at all, but I think it would be neat to get some small keys in the main dungeons of Breath 2. Final request for main dungeons, I just want more of them. Like I said, I really enjoyed the Divine Beasts, but only having 4 of them was kinda disappointing. It was fine to have so few in Breath because of how experimental and cool the open world was, but I want some more in the sequel. Of course, the Divine Beasts weren't the only dungeons in Breath. The 120 shrines were also there, and they were also awesome. Some difficulty scaling on them for a better sense of progression would be appreciated, but I don't think Nintendo needs to do much to keep the shrines satisfying. Maybe less blessing and tests of strength shrines, but just make a similar number of new shrines in maybe a cooler, more unique style, and they are golden in that department. I'd obviously be at least okay with the dungeons in Breath 2 almost any way they did them, but there was one thing in Breath of the Wild that I was actively unhappy about. I thought the combat was great and the story and dungeons got the job done, but one thing I did not like was the crafting system, or rather, the lack thereof. You can cook things, which I thought was super fun, but then there's the things you can't turn into food. Bugs, monster parts, minerals, these are all things you could collect a lot of, but never use beyond selling them for rupees. But Alph, I hear you say. Hey Squidward, what are you doing here? You can use monster parts and bugs for things other than money. You can make them into potions, which boost your stats. How is that not useful? Okay, first of all, I'm glad to have you back, Squidward, but second of all, that's not really the case. You are technically correct, you can use monster parts and bugs to make potions, but why would you ever do that? Every boost you can get from a potion is also available to get from certain food dishes, but food dishes also give you hearts, and food is literally always easier to get than tracking down the right bug for a potion. What this means is that food is always objectively better than potions, so there's no reason to ever use monster parts or bugs. But Alph, the game is already so rounded besides that. What else could these monster parts possibly be used for? Man, Squidward, you've been back for 30 seconds and you're already starting to get on my nerves. And for the record, there is one really big, really obvious thing to use monsters on: upgrading and or repairing your weapons. Straight up fixing all your best weapons with a couple moblin teeth might be a bit overpowered, but you can already find weapons with stat boosts like increased durability or attack power, so why not use some of your monster parts for that? All we'd need is a blacksmith or something in every village or whatever, and bam! Give him a weapon and some monster parts to increase the stats of your favorite moblin club. This system seems so perfect to me, I almost have to wonder if they left it out due to time constraints during the game's development. I mean, monster parts are useless, there's no way to control the stat boosts of weapons, it just makes too much sense for it not to be included in Breath 2. The more crafting systems Breath 2 has, the better if you ask me, but just adding the ability to enhance weapons with monster parts would go a very long way to make the game the best it could be. Alright, I think that's gonna wrap it up. Those are my hopes for the Breath of the Wild sequel. I'm super excited about this, so remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and have a great day!